Here we are the next day, so this is pretty much emptied out now. So that's very convenient. So let's go ahead and continue on here. Take the exhaust system out. Take out some more of these engine components here. And see if we can work a little magic here and get that engine out and leave the transmission in place. Okay, so here we are at the end of day 2. Another short day here. Tomorrow we'll get a little more serious and spend a whole day on it. But this is where we're at. So as you can see, everything's pretty much removed here with the exception of just a basic engine block here, and then it's still attached to the transmission and it's still mounted to the car in 4 positions. And it's just the only thing else that it's connected to this is actually just the rods back to the manual transmission stick, and then the axles are still attached. We're ready to go ahead and drop the engine now. I looked at this last night. I think we can do it, so I'm going to attempt to do it. So what that's going to enable us to do is to keep the transmission in place, the axles in place, the connecting rods to the transmission will be in place. So basically all that stays. All the stuff that we want to keep is going to stay. And we're simply going to drop this piece of junk here, the ice. That's what we're going to drop here. So I've got it supported right now. We should be able to just remove all of our stuff here since there's no pressure on this mount now. Take off all the belts, all of the pulleys and all that stuff, and should give us about 3.5 inches clearance. So should be able to just slide the engine out here from the transmission once we take the bolts off. And then as far as this mount here, it's right next to the transmission, so but it's actually technically bolted to the engine. So I think what we can do is once we get the engine out, we can cut off a piece of this metal here that was part of the engine. Cut that off, and then with a plasma cutter, or which is a saw blade, and then turn around and use that piece again to mount our transmission straight to the mount. And that way we had 3 mounts, original equipment mounts, and we won't have to fabricate anything too much more than that. So anyway, that's the concept. Let's make it happen. I've got the transmission jack supporting the transmission, giving a little bit extra support. And then I've got the engine resting on this jack right here. And I've removed all the engine mounts on the engine side. So the right side one right here is gone, and then as much as this other stuff I could take out, I've taken out. Give us enough clearance, hopefully, to be able to slide the engine out. And then the front engine mount is off. And the transmission is still mounted on the left side and will remain so, and then also in the back. So the engine is resting on the transaxle as well as the jack. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove the bolts that are attaching the engine to the transaxle. So like there's 1, 2, 3, 4. I took one off already. 5, 6, 7, 8. It's probably 7 or 8 of them. And then we're just going to take those out, and then we should be able to just slide this engine right on out. We've got all the bolts out right now. There's one little piece of metal right here that's braced from this bracket right here to the engine, sandwiched between the engine and the transmission there. So you have to bend that, cut it and bend it back. We'll probably eventually cut it off completely, but that's the only thing that should be retaining it in place now. What I said about using the floor jack, that was not what you want to do. Do not do that. The better method is to put it on the chain, on a shop crane, as so, and then lift it out. And as you can see here, it looks like we got it fully detached now. We just have to lower it down. If you use the other method, try to use the floor jack. It doesn't work worth it. It doesn't work at all, because what ends up happening is it snags on something, and I was working on it for 30 minutes trying to get it out. I thought that would be the cheaper, easier way to do it, but it turns out that there's nothing like having a shop crane. This is what you want right here. Definitely need the shop crane. It makes life a whole lot easier. And then that way, what you can do is you can use both hands and wiggle it out, and that's all I had to do. So basically, it's on the crane like this, and you can just kind of work it with your leg and pull back on it, and then you can take both hands. I have one hand on the camera here, but you basically grab it with both hands and shake it off, and that's how I got it out. So it looks like this is going to work. It looks really tight, as you can see right there, very, very tight, but it's pushing over here, but all we have to do is lower it down, Okay, so here's what it's looking like right here. As we lower it down, it twists to the side, so no problem. This method seems to be working perfectly here. Now we just lower it down a little bit more. We don't want to scratch our bodywork here though. All right, there it is, down on the ground. Shop crane has been taken away. As we are done with using that, this is how it rests right here. I should be able to just tilt it towards me and then slide it out, and that will be that. Engine be gone. We don't really need the clutch or the flywheel. That's just extra weight. I don't think there's any reason why we need that. So this is what we got right here. We're going to leave that right intact here. One of the earliest things we're going to do is fabricate our mount here and put our mount back in place here. The next step before we throw the engine out is we want to keep a couple things here. You want to remove the pressure plate and get to the clutch disc here. And the reason why is because this piece in the middle here is it's a perfect match for our into our transmission. So we already have something that we know for a fact that fits perfectly. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut this out and then modify it a little bit more, maybe smooth it out, get it nice and round, balanced properly, and then we'll take this little piece in the center and we'll weld it to another piece that's going to mount directly to our motor. Took out the gas tank, got that done. So that's good. Spilled some gas in the process. I'm 3 for 3 on doing that. No matter how careful I am, I always spill a little bit here. Something to be aware of. The fuel tank out. Next thing we're going to want to do is take out the fuel lines. We got 1, 2, 3 right here. Be careful not to damage the brake lines, as those are adjacent and look almost the same, but they're a little bit smaller diameter. These two right here. And now, since we've decided that we're not going to need the clutch, we can go ahead and take these brackets off too, for the engagement bar here, and then these extra brackets down here, and then these cables, the accelerator cable and the clutch cable. We will need the speedometer cable though. That will be going back in, and in fact I don't even have to disconnect it. I could actually technically put that back in right now if we wanted to, but I'll leave it out of the way just for now. So we will have an active speedometer, so that's good. So as far as the pedal area goes, we're going to be keeping the brake pedal. Since it's completely untouched and unnecessary to modify it, we're going to be leaving that alone. So that saves some time. As far as accelerator, we're going to be yanking this out and putting in an electronic drive-by-wire accelerator pedal instead. But we'll note what the distance is. Looks like it's just slightly down from the brake pedal. And then the clutch pedal goes away completely since we're not going to need it. The manual trans will shift fine without a clutch, and it's not going to be, we're not going to be rolling through the gears consistently. We're going to be just basically picking a gear and sticking with it. If we're on the highway, we'll pick 5th, and if we're driving around town, probably 3rd would be fine. And if we want to do burnouts, we can just shift it into 1st, and that will shred the tires real quickly. Okay, to recap what we've done today, we took the gas pedal out, we took the fuel lines out, and we took this out here. This is the air conditioning, the inner condenser, or the chiller unit. So we went ahead and took that out. We've got the lower half of it right here. We're going to put this back in, probably redo the seal on this thing as this is coming apart here, as you can see. But I do want to be able to put it back together so we can control the airflow and everything. But we are going to have heat, so we do want to be able to control our ducting and everything. So we will be putting that back together. Here's everything we took out. Accelerator pedal. The line going to the throttle. And then the clutch cable. We also did some wiring. Go back over here. We also kind of messed up with the wiring a little bit, filtered out some of the wire, and we pulled some of the wire in that we want to use, like the backup light, for example. I already filtered that out. There was a wire going down to the transmission, so we backtracked that and took it inside the car, because that's how you want to control it on an electric car. You don't really want to go into reverse. It'd be better to just have a straight switch, so you can turn it into reverse. And so that's what I've done right here. So I've got tracked those wires down right there. So that was going directly into our transmission. So we'll be able to route that over here and have a switch for reverse. Or you can go into, you know, this way too. But the light will be attached to the switch. So anyway, another day, more progress. The next step here in our procedure here is to cut off this little piece of the engine block here. You see how this goes right here. Just using an angle grinder and Sawzall. Works pretty nicely. And what this gains is we have a bolting places right here to our transmission. And these are the two bolts that go to our front motor mount. So everything's perfectly aligned as it was before. And since we don't need that thing anymore, why not just use this piece here? That way we don't have to custom fabricate something. So here's what it's looking like in the front now. We've got our support back in place, our front motor mount slash transmission mount. So that came out nicely, nice and perfect. And we've removed the transmission jack, because now we have this transmission is now on 3 mounts right now, which is more than enough support. And the other thing that we've done here is we've removed the clutch rod that's sticking out for the throwout bearing. So the throwout bearing came out. I tried to remove this, but it's embedded in there, like ridiculously difficult to try to get it out. So I was going to try to cut it at the bottom. So I ended up just cutting it at the top here and just removed it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to weld it right here to keep it from flapping around, because the last thing we want to do is have this thing come loose here and do that. That would not be good, because we don't want to have any contact with our motor, and our adapter plate's going to be right, well, our adapter is going to be right around here in this location, and then our motor is going to be connecting to it. And so there's going to be something spinning right here that's going to be sticking up, and last thing we want is this thing to come in here and smack into that. So we're going to weld that. It's going to be easier than trying to remove it. And so yeah, next thing we're going to do is we got our measurements right here for a plate, and we're going to go ahead and do some sort of custom adapter plate. I think it's going to be pretty simple here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts here that we're going to use. Just have a square piece of steel plate come up. We'll do some measurements here, find our center point, get that as a primary. Once we get our center point, then we'll have our motor mounts on the other side for our motor, and then we'll just line it right up there, and then pretty much outline this, and then drill holes out from there. And just kind of work our way outwards from the center. And that should be interesting. So anyway, the next step we're going to do now is, since everything is off the car now, we might want to take out the radiator fan. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll take out the radiator fan, because I don't think we're going to need the fan. I do want to have the radiator just for our controller, to keep the controller nice and cool. I want to have a little, at least a little radiator right there. So we're going to have a water-cooled motor or water-cooled controller. So I do want to keep the radiator. And I noticed I never even bothered to take it out, never got in the way. So that saved me some more steps too. Yeah, so after we do that, we'll go ahead and put the wheels back on and lower it down and see how much it weighs. And that will be a good basis for weight distribution for a battery pack and all that kind of stuff like that. See how many batteries we can stick in here. I'm suspecting about a 12 kilowatt pack, similar to what I did with my first car, the Cappuccino. That was a 12 kilowatt pack too. Seemed to work really good, and that was a 1,600 pound car. This is about a 1,700 pound car, so a little bit heavier, and we didn't take off quite as much stuff too. So be interesting to see what our weight is. So here's the car up on the scales. Let's see what kind of weight we got here. All right, so there's our numbers. I'm sorry about the glare. Try to stay out of the glare there. About 1285. So that's interesting. So about 402 pounds. But notice that the right front of course, that's the driver's side, that's the steering column side, that's always heavier than the left front. So that's probably the reason why. But interestingly, in the rear though, why is the left rear heavier than the right rear? But once again, we'll be able to shift our batteries around. Like in the back, we'll be able to shift them to the right a little bit. In the front, we can shift the batteries to the left a little bit to compensate for that. Try to equal it out a little bit side to side. But we're going to probably maintain the front to rear ratio. That's probably the best. But anyway, that's what we have to work with, about 402 or so pounds. So now we have to design our battery pack and our motor system and all the other bits and pieces that we're going to be adding to the system with the goal of keeping the weight under 400 pounds that we put on. Total weight of about 1,700 or so is our target. So anyway, let's go ahead and do that. I just ordered the motor. Since we know what our weights are and everything, I figured it all out. I sat down and just looked at it really hard and determined what kind of motor we want to stick in here and how much power we want. So I selected a motor that has over twice the torque and significantly more horsepower than the original engine, and that's compared to a new engine, you know, because most engines are going to be tired and have less power. So yeah, this thing's going to be quite a screamer, so I'm looking forward to that. About 125 pounds of torque. Originally 55, so it's going to be we're still going to have our 5-speed manual, so 5-speed manual is intact, so we'll still be able to shift and stuff, so we'll be able to fine-tune it even more. So I imagine putting it in first gear would be an experience of basically useless, because it's going to just shred the tires. I mean, it's just going to burn out the tires probably doing that, but we'll find out. It's going to be fun. Anyway, so our next step here is since we know we have our motor coming in now, go ahead and do our template. So I've got a piece of cardboard here. This is our adapter plate, and this is our template here. So I've already got the holes, the 4 locations that I'm going to locate it. All I have to do now is find the center line of the shaft, which is somewhere down here, I think, approximately. I'm going to figure out a system to find that. Once we find that mark, once we have that mark, then we can just take this cardboard piece off and then match it to our motor. I'm probably going to wait for the motor to arrive, so that way I know for sure what I'm doing. I mean, even though I do have official drawings that show where the hole locations are, I still want to know in person. I still want to wait for that motor to arrive. So it's going to be probably 2 or 3 weeks for the motor to arrive, so that's going to give us time to do some other stuff. So this only took a few hours to do that, so maybe a half a day just playing around with that. So we still got a couple weeks of stuff to do. So while we're waiting, oh yeah, also this is going to be our plate right here. So this is the plate that I already got this, I already bought it. It's nice thick steel. It's I think it's going to be just thick enough to support our weight. So it's going to be a little bit smaller than that. It's going to match this right here. But once we know that this is accurate, we're going to test it, double check it, triple check it. Once we have that all done, then we're going to go ahead and transfer that template onto our plate here and then cut it one time and get it right the first time, and then we're going to use that. And also I'll probably keep this pattern too for future use. That might be something available. I'm thinking about possibly, I know some other PAO enthusiasts might want to do this bod themselves, convert over to electric, so just knowing that, I might just keep that design and maybe possibly offer it as something, an offering. That way you don't have to spend 2 or 3 days messing around with it. You can just buy it. So anyway, that's an option. So anyway, let's continue on.